Thank you so much, Marjorie, for joining us. As you know, Nisa and I were talking about your company, Lukso, a few weeks ago on one of our first episodes. So we're very excited to have you join us today.
Amazing. Well, I'm super excited to join you too. I mean, I love what you guys are doing, and I'm super happy that we have like these three cities, LA, New York, Berlin situation happening right now. I think is wonderful.
Yeah. So tell us about your background and how did you get into the blockchain space, and then how did you get started and come up with the idea for Lukso?
Yeah, totally. Well, so my education is like in design and architecture. So I'm a bit of like an odd figure with I have like a lot of like different skills, and my background as an architect and as a designer really gives me like I'm always thinking about how can we improve this, how can we make experiences better and stuff. So I think it's like a designer's mindset that is kind of like driving me. In my professional career, I worked very little as an architect. I stopped working after like 2 years after graduation. I made my license and I was like, this was great. Auf Wiedersehen. I'm going to Germany. So I came to Germany. I did a second master's degree in like media art and design. It was between a university here in Germany and a university in upstate New York in Buffalo. So I did that, and that kind of like opened up like kind of like my portfolio of like possibilities and kind of like the space I could work. So then I started working, doing a lot of like brand strategy and brand experience across Europe, working a lot in Switzerland and in Germany with clients, across like industries. I would work a lot with tobacco and automotive and fashion and things like that. Always doing like a lot of strategy, but everything that I was doing was also informed a lot by like design and aesthetics and stuff like that. And that brought me like in one point in my career, I got this really cool offer to work for Ernst & Young of all places, to build an innovation lab. Basically, they needed somebody who has like a kind of like a technical background to one extent, but also had a bit of like a creative mindset when it comes to problem solving. So I said, like, sure, I can do that. And me and my partner, we have been investing in Bitcoin since like 2013. So we were like really involved in the whole blockchain stuff, more like as a hobby, let's say. And then when I was working at Ernst & Young, or simultaneously, he started working for the Ethereum Foundation, like very early on. So then kind of like he transformed his hobby into his full-time passion as a developer for the foundation, which was amazing. So we were very early, very in touch with the whole Ethereum community and kind of like building that from the beginning, right? So that kind of like started informing my work that I was doing for Ernst & Young as a consultant, because all of a sudden, like all of the enterprise people were like, wait a second, we have to do something with blockchain. What do we do? And my boss was like, Marjorie, you can do it. You know what a blockchain is. And I was like, okay. So that kind of happened. It was really interesting. So I got like, I took the IOTA Foundation as a client very early on. And it was basically always like how we take the technology and implement it to solve X problem or for, new business models and stuff, always within the clients that we were having. So it was always like automotive and pharmaceutical. So we did a lot of like supply chain and stuff like that, like super early on, right? Like very, very early, when you could still like get the Ethereum guys to come and give a talk for the executives, right? That doesn't happen anymore. So it was very cool, but in a way we were a bit like in the eye of the hurricane. So I didn't know how far the whole impact of the blockchain space was going, right? Like we were like working on it. We were here in Berlin. The Ethereum Foundation had an office here in Berlin. So I didn't know how big this was, you know what I mean? And then it was when we started traveling, like I was like, oh my God, like everybody's into this right now. Like it grew so fast, and it was obvious that it was going to transform so many industries, right? And I was working as a corporate, and I was like, oh my God, the world is changing, and I'm working in a corporation. This is really a catastrophe. I have to change this immediately. So I decided, what better time than now to like make a change. So I made like the first draft for Lukso, like saying, okay, I have made already all of these like use cases for like having a wallet integrated in the car, and the car makes the payments and blah, 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 or like supply chain for, this pharmaceutical thing, la, 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 la. I thought, okay, what can we all else do with this technology, right? And it also like maybe goes outside of this whole decentralized finance kind of narrative. So I make a quick draft of like thinking about industries that could get impacted by blockchain and like have like benefit from it. Made a paper, then started showing it to my friends, and then my friends all got very excited, and I was like, oh, this is great. So then within a couple of days, I have like people who wanted to work with me. We have like their team, and I thought, okay, time to quit my job. So I quit my job and went 100% full time on it. And that was how we kind of got started. And the idea, you know, very quickly resonated a lot with the fashion people. You know, every time we would talk with a fashion executive, they were like, yes, we need it, because they're very aware, right? They kind of like passed the whole e-commerce. They thought, oh, that's going away. Nobody cares. Nobody's going to buy clothes in the internet. You know, they were a bit skeptical. So I think now they really want to like react quickly and be aware of technologies. So, you know, we got a lot of really great feedback from those guys, and kind of like we built like a lot of like of our things around that industry, also our advisory board, have a lot of like really nice and cool fashion executives. So we started from there, but we don't see it exclusive of like fashion solutions, but also like, you know, for other creative industries. You know, in our white paper, we define it as creative economies in a very kind of like semi-intellectual way. But, you know, we kind of like try to grasp what does it mean, you know, like all of those industries that, you know, that we enjoy and that we all participate in, you know, within fashion and lifestyle and sneakers collecting, and you know, all of the things that are fun, and you know, they're a huge chunk of our economy, but they don't necessarily come into the capsule of like decentralized finance or whatever.
Just so everybody understands, tell us what the business is, how it works, and how it helps the fashion industry.
100%. So basically we envision Lukso as this kind of like multiverse blockchain, right? So the first part of our business is the infrastructure itself. So we are tech company building a blockchain solution, right? So, you know, we have an amazing team of developers working on like the protocol layer of the blockchain itself, right? So we have a test network running, and that's kind of like the foundation. And we've envisioned this blockchain as kind of almost like a playground, like a baukasten, where creatives can come and start building things. And then, but we know, you know, the blockchain tech is not really accessible. It's not very easy to understand. So we are building all of the layers in between to make it very simple for non-tech people, but you know, that still can benefit from the blockchain to use it. So we are working a lot in the standard level. So we have a standards roundtable that we host and that we're driving, where we have industry partners coming in, you know, the guys from Porsche and Farfetch and other companies, SAP, they come and we discuss kind of like the standard level, which is, you know, smart contract standards, and they would be open source. And on top of that, we start building like certain like tools that kind of like more creative people can use. Like, for example, to be more concrete, like how you register a physical product on the blockchain. And how you were saying, Nisa, in the podcast that you guys had before, you know, how kind of like you map the physical product to the digital identity, right? So we are doing a lot of things around that, you know, creating an identity for a brand, creating an identity for an author, for a user, you know, but an universal identity, right? That is like self-owned, self-sovereign. And, you know, if you buy a handbag from whatever designer, you know, only that brand, only that house should be the one owning the identity of the house and registering those items. So we're working a lot in that level of kind of like, okay, how do I bring like real life products into the blockchain? Consumer products, we could call them, but also like new category of assets, like digital fashion and digital collectibles and fun stuff like that. Like how can we take those into the blockchain? You know, but the people creating these assets are not tech people, right? So we need to create that kind of like that transition or that Ubagang layer to allow people to kind of like join. And that's basically kind of like the work that we do. So we put several hats depending on the time of the day. You know, in one moment, you know, it's all about like that basic, you know, technological layer. Then some moments we are working only on the standards development, and then the top layer that is actually the most fun one, at least for me, when it's like creating those tools that kind of like the more creative people can use, and then they can start like feeding the ecosystem with content effectively, right? So it's making the technology as visible as possible, like very seamless. I think that's one of our missions, to make it really easy. Even still today, it's like really hard. I mean, if you want to like have a wallet and start transacting and doing whatever, it can be super challenging. So we want to make it super easy in that layer. So that's what Lukso is in its core. So it's this multiverse blockchain, like powered by the standards, powered by the solutions, in order to enable creative industries to use the blockchain. And you know, one of the things that I think we believe on, and that we are very like kind of like even dogmatic about it, is that we believe it has to be a public infrastructure. If you're going to be in a blockchain, it should be something that is verifiable and open to anyone. Every other kind of solution for us, it feels like kind of like, then just use a database, you know what I mean? So we are kind of like, we believe, you know, kind of a future where you will have a lot of like content and content creators putting content in a public setting.
You're actually solving a huge problem in the fashion industry, which is counterfeit. And to my knowledge, nobody else is targeting that industry with blockchain technology, unless you know of something else. But that should be very appealing, and also very appealing to a lot of women who, you know, want to collect designer clothing, right? So this is a use that really could open up that market even more.
100%. I think, you know, the fashion industry is a really nice industry, right? Like, I mean, from the outside, right? But they are massive and they have a huge impact in the planet. So I think on the one hand, they have a lot of like responsibility towards like the new consumer, like people our age and even younger. You know, we are not satisfied just by having the beautiful handbag. We want to know what is behind this, right? How was it made? By whom? Like, is this in sync with my values, right? I go every day to the organic supermarket, but then I go and buy this handbag, which is totally, you know, dirty from an, you know, environmental perspective. So I think it's also about information that is so important. Also, like, I think the level of content in a physical product is very shallow. So we need to inform those products with actual content that it gives you a real experience. And this is something that we can make with technology, right? Like knowing that that handbag came from a beautiful atelier in Paris and it was made by this amazing woman who's been working there for 40 years. It's like kind of fun to know, right? So we should be able to know that, but also to know that it's in sync with our values and things like this. So I think they have to change. They know they have to change. There has to be a transformation fundamentally of how the business has been running. You know, the products are the same since 100 years. I mean, handbags, they're still made out of leather and you have a strap and you put it on. I mean, they haven't changed in their physicality. So I think they have to change in kind of like the content that they provide to the user. So we do feel that we solved that problem 100%. And you know, the exciting part about putting identities into products and infusing those products with that transparency is that that's like a basic building block for a bunch of other stuff you can do later, right? Once the products have identity, you know, the three of us, we could start transacting with our handbags or our sneakers living in the blockchain. And, you know, they are in a vault in Switzerland, but the three of us in different locations are transacting and whatever. So I think there's a lot of cool things.
It's easier than
it's
gold.
Like gold. Totally. And they do increase in value, right? So it makes sense that you get something out of it.
Right.
But we do definitely see that as solving that problem. I mean, we're super interested in solving problems, but I think we also want to do things that, okay, it will make the problems almost irrelevant because we will have this new stuff. So the problem doesn't exist anymore. So we kind of like operate in the two kind of like layer, always with everything we do, but 100%. And to answer your question regarding other startups doing similar things, there are a couple of people doing similar attempts when it comes to registering products on the blockchain. For example, one of our partners called Ariane, they're from France. They also they have a solution to register products on the blockchain. They're our partners, so they will use our network to do that. You know, but the most important thing, and this is something that we really drive for, and the reason why we have a standards discussion table is because you have to standardize the products before you put them in the blockchain, right? Like registering products, it's fine, okay, we can do it. But the interesting stuff is when you have a common standard across different manufacturers and different people using the same standard, meaning all of those products will be somehow compatible with each other. So if we have, if Pam built a wallet that is this amazing, dream wallet that it looks like the Clueless app, where you can get dressed, she builds it. She could add all of the items from all different designers in that app, right? Because she doesn't have to talk to anyone's API. The products are standardized in the blockchain. They have standardized IDs on the blockchain, so she doesn't have to ask anyone. She can you can start adding, the products into different wallets and different experiences. So I think that's the super interesting part, and that's why we put so much emphasis in the standard. I think right now it's not very clear. I mean, for some people it is, but like in general, it's not very clear why we need smart contract standards. But it's like the key of like actually creating interoperability in the blockchain, right? That you can actually, the stuff that you're doing and that I'm doing and the Pam is doing is compatible with each other, right? We just don't want to have more silos, but now decentralized silos. That's what we want to prevent. Right.
So the Lukso interface that you're building, it's mainly you're working with these brands, right? Like right now, or is it something that a consumer would interact with?
Yeah, that's a bit more in the future, right? So right now we're working on a lot of like the core components, and a lot of those core components are being built with like enterprise partners. Mm-hmm. So we do work a lot with enterprise partners, but we are very tricky for enterprises because everything we do is going to be eventually open source. So the idea is that everything that we do can be used by everyone. Our idea is to like create an ecosystem where everybody can participate and kind of like take the tools, because those things are like de facto, right? That's not the business model. Like that's the foundation. The business model should come on top of that, and that's where everybody else comes and play a role, right? But those basic pieces should be open for everyone. So that's why we always have a little bit of like an issue when you see a lot of like these app solutions that have even somehow like a token inside that you don't really need, or everything that is being built is decentralized, but it's in the silo of this app. It's like replicating Web 2 with Web 3 tools, right? And what we want to do is actually build the Web 3. They should be superior to Web 2.
So how are you finding, given the pandemic, that that's changing your business or demand in general for fashion?
For us, the whole pandemic thing started in January because our plan was to go at the beginning of the year to go to Asia. And all of a sudden we have to cancel. So all of February got canceled. And then we were like, okay, now we adapted. And then March got canceled because then the pandemic made it to Europe. So it's been definitely a challenging year in the sense that you have to adapt very quickly. I think it just, it has support also a lot of the arguments that we have been making for the last 2 years around like digitalization and dematerialization of your daily life. The necessity of having like digital assets. There are actual assets that you can trade. Digital fashion is an awesome thing. It's really fun. It has very little environmental impact. They can be true assets living on the blockchain, and we could be wearing some really fabulous digital hoodies right now if we could. So it has made a really great kind of like argument for some of the points that we have been making. I think it's been kind of like a filter, this pandemic, for a lot of startups and young companies, right? Like you really have to focus on what is important and fundamental for your business, right? And for us, have been quite productive, definitely challenging, but also very productive. We are fortunate enough that our work is 100% digital, and doesn't matter if everybody's in their houses. We kind of like increase productivity a little bit, which was pretty unexpected. So we're being more productive than normal. And obviously, we're in Germany, so we receive a lot of support from the state and stuff like that. But it's been challenging, 100%. When it comes to business partners, everything kind of like slowed down a little bit. All of, I think, like the larger corporations that kind of like, they don't want to take risks right now. They're just like waiting and seeing how the whole thing is going to unfold. Obviously, a lot of those companies have headquarters in Milano and in Paris, which were like super affected locations. So it's been, in that sense, pretty, it did calm down a little bit. But in all along, like it really was good for us because we kind of like really focus on what we have to do, and we have very little distractions. But it is a challenge, and I think it make us, all of us, rethink, right? When you are like in your house and you notice that you haven't checked your closet for 2 weeks. You're like, huh, so I don't need all of those clothes for real. Like, it's the truth. I mean, you don't need them. And everything that we consume and the way we spend our money and our time, it's been really kind of like, I think we all have a moment to reflect on that. So I'm a big fan of digital assets. I think a lot of the desire that we have for consuming certain products can be satisfied through digital consumption. So I think we will see a rising of a new category of assets that will be 100% digital fashion. And I think, you know, for us and people even older than us, it's a bit difficult to imagine like how this digital stuff can have value. But for the younger kids, it's like so obvious, right? And I think it's also like you know, it's a learning curve. But we're very excited about that. So I think these have opened the gates for like digital fashion and digital collectibles and digital consumption and things like this.
Right,
So
exactly. I mean, you can almost picture the world where teenage girls are going into their virtual reality party with their new designer handbag that they bought, and then they want to trade it, they want to sell it, they want to just get a lot of attention. You know, that's really a way, and that's happening in these virtual games. It's just that, you know, this is one way, very specific. I think that's
100%.
really exciting for another
100%.
outlet for young girls.
100%, 100%. And I think, I mean, we see it, you know, we just today we made we're having an event happening with a partner in Asia. So we're making like a tiny token sale in Asia. And then one of the people from the marketing department, she was like, oh, Marjorie, do you have any swag to send for our users? And I was like, I'm going to send swag to China. It's like going to take 3 weeks. And what am I going to send? And I was like, well, what I can make them is a digital hoodie. And a digital hoodie is like done, like I have this really amazing digital fashion designer. We got it done like in 4 days. We did like 20 variations, you know, no impact besides the few hours in the 3D program. And, you know, it's like all of a sudden we have this amazing product, you know, that is way more like, you know, from the looks, it's like super impactful because it has like these textures that you cannot have in real life. But which better swag you want, you know, like sending like really cheap t-shirts across the globe for like a little bit of swag, it doesn't make sense, right? So I think like those new categories and those new solutions, and I think, you know, rethinking like, okay, if I go to a conference, do I really need another pen that I'm not going to use? Like, you know, like thinking about what are those assets that are really exciting, really cool, that people would be really pumped to get, but they have zero impact. And, you know, the problem is digital assets right now, it's really difficult to monetize from those assets. It's only like in game and they're in the silo of that game. But if those digital assets are living in a blockchain infrastructure and you can trade them outside of the game and you can trade them across games, then it gets like super interesting. Then
yeah, I mean, I'm waiting for my digital hoodie.
Oh, you're getting. Oh, you guys are getting it. You guys are getting
it. Yeah, I can't wait for that. You know, they're going to sell out like hotcakes. So
yeah, done deal. I will send you guys some. But yeah, definitely. And I think you were saying about young girls, and this is also one of the things that is in the ethos of Lukso, is definitely addressing like the other half of the planet, or more than the half, the other 51% of the planet who's not really involved in the conversation at the moment. For us, super important as well.
Is there anything outside of like blockchain and the, you know, digital space that you're looking at? That, because you said that you have a background in design and architecture, which I think is fascinating.
Yeah. So that was my kind of like my degrees that I made. You know, I always wonder, like, you know, we all choose where we're going to study like super young. Like you have to make these decisions when you're like 16 and 17, and then you invest the next 5-6 years of your life in that direction. I'm super glad that was the direction that I chose, but I think more like after I graduated, I realized I didn't want to work as an architect. It was pretty clear. I still love architecture though, but I think I think education right now, because the world is changing so far, even for you, Nisa, as a lawyer, you know, you have to be like on your tiptoes. Like, things are changing very quickly. I think it gives you like a framework for your brain. Like your education is like this framework, and kind of like inform the way you think and you operate. So I think that's kind of like inform my problem solving, my project management, like all of those skills. I do spend a lot of time like educating myself around the topics that I'm super interested in. But yeah, it's kind of like inform our, the way I take decisions. And if you guys come to Berlin, like our office is like super beautiful. You know, that's the advantages when the CEO has a degree in architecture. You have like really nice furniture and really nice space. But yeah, that's one of the things that, you know, it's kind of like informing my DNA and informs everything I do for sure. Yeah. You know, for us, it has been, you know, one of the missions. And I think, you know, when we start working in the blockchain space has been, you know, at the beginning, like very early, like let's say 8 years ago, the interfaces were hideous, right? Like that was like, they were unusable. So they are getting better. So the thing is now we have to make sure that the blockchain becomes completely invisible and we only have like really beautiful technology to use, right? To make it really beautiful. I think that's one of our missions. And also including the other half of the world's population. You know, I put a lot of like effort into trying to recruit female developers, trying to recruit, you know, as many females as we can. You know, I'm working, I asked one of my interns to help me make like a 101 guide of how to invest in crypto, like easiest steps to take, because it's really intimidating. If you haven't ever done it and you say, I'm going to buy Bitcoin, it's like the Wild West, right? And you don't know, and half of the staff are scams and stuff like that. So I think, you know, there's a lot of women really interested in the technology. They're working in the technology, but they're not benefiting at all from like the investment perspective. And I think, you know, if we can kind of like help educate each other, I think the guys do a really good job of kind of like showing each other and giving each other investment tips and whatever. But if we can help each other to kind of like, you know, incentivize to like take a bit more of risk or invest money or put stuff in, you know, I think it's super important that we also participate in the growth, because right now the numbers are really bad, right? Like all of the people making money or like making products with blockchain technology are guys between 18 and 35, and they're all white living in the West. It's like, oh, surprise. You know, it's like the war before is the war now. It hasn't changed. So for us, it's like super important to have that part. I have a group of women entrepreneurs that I meet once a month. We host these dinners here in Berlin, and you know, you see it, like their interest is more in it's more almost like idealistic, like they have this ideal, and they don't talk so much about like trading and money and short positions and long positions. And then if you go to the same dinner with the guys, it's like 90% of the conversation revolves like around like money, right? So I think it's a little bit to inform ourselves, and that we have to take the power into our hands and kind of like also take some risk and
absolutely. And there was an article that came out this week about that there's more women now on all the exchanges, and more women getting involved now that they're home in the pandemic. So that's one positive that's happening.
Awesome. That's so good to know. That's so good to know. That's amazing. Yeah, you see, because I think it's also about finding the time also to like figure it out. I think it's also one thing. Mostly women, also working women, you know, they put so many different hats in one day, like their moms, their wives, they have kids, they work, they have two works, and they also look perfect in the morning, and they blow dry their hairs and, you know, do everything.
I mean,
so,
now that nobody needs to look good, there's all this
yeah.
time.
Yeah, I feel like coming into this call with you too is be like, oh my God, wait a second, I'm going to a call.
Right.
Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you sharing this story with us, and we know that other people will as well.
Amazing. Well, it was been a pleasure chatting with both of you. Big fan. I am a big supporter. You guys know you have a big supporter here in Berlin. And yeah, I wish more episodes of like really good content for everyone.
Thank you.